One of the new parties contesting the upcoming elections is Rise Mzansi, formed last year, led by the former newspaper editor Songezo Zibi. Today, the party holding a rally in Joburg, raising issues they say will be fixed by their Gauteng Premier candidate, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, if she's elected into the position. Our reporter Juniuor Khumalo at the rally earlier joins me now in studio. Junior, good afternoon to you. Another rally, another set of promises for you today. What promises from Rise Mzansi?
Indeed, Stephen, more promises from Rise Mzansi this time around. They were just outlining some of the things that they would do should they get into power into the Gauteng province. So their provincial premier candidate, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, was just outlining how they will change the promise. She included promises of making about 600,000 jobs. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
Rise Mzansi has a plan for Gauteng. I, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, I have a plan for Gauteng. I have a plan to reignite this economy and create jobs. 600,000 permanent new jobs. I lama peace job now. I lama peace job. I have a plan to ensure that our children are cared for. I have a plan to clean out all the corrupt politicians and corrupt officials in government. I have a plan to clean our streets and ensure that the people of Gauteng no longer live in squalor and filth and dirt.
That is the Gauteng Premier candidate Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, who was just speaking about some of the plans that Rise Mzansi have. She spoke about creating 600,000 jobs. She said this will be done through speaking to various industries. They've already, according to her, identified various industries that they'll speak to and try and get these jobs. They've also spoken to the private sector as well to try and raise these jobs. But also they will be focusing on the local economy. That's what she promised, especially in Joburg. We know that Joburg at some point was the city of gold. So she said they're trying to revive that as well. So those are some of the promises that they have been making today.
I mean, we see all sorts of parties promising jobs, making big promises about the economy. I remember back in 2009, the governing party then and now, the ANC making jobs the prime part of their election manifesto. Things unfortunately went backwards, and that was primarily because of what was happening in other parts of the world. I mean, does she have any sort of detailed plan? 600,000 jobs in Gauteng. That's a huge number of jobs.
That's a lot of jobs. So there's no detail really from what she was saying. She just spoke about speaking to the various industries, also speaking to the private sector, but also that focus on local economies, building local brands and trying to sponsor them. But also she spoke about how they are going to try and create housing in Joburg, in the CBD in particular, because she spoke about how a lot of people spend about 40% of their salaries on transportation coming into the inner city. So those are some of the plans that they are trying to implement should they come into government.
It's interesting watching some of the new parties like Rise Mzansi. It's a party that's been around for a little longer than some of the newer parties, but doesn't have any representation in Parliament, never really contested an election. From what you can see, how are they finding that? It's easy to say we're going to be a new party. They got over the first hurdle. They got the required number of signatures for registration. But campaigning is hard.
Indeed, campaigning is going to be hard, but one thing they've also managed to do is try and attract some individuals that have been in governance before. In Johannesburg, Mahashule Ghana, who was previously with the DA, is now with Rise Mzansi. There is also Kume Ramolefo as well, who was a member of the provincial legislature in Gauteng, who is now also with Rise Mzansi. There's also Mark Haywood, who also was with Roger Jardin's Change Starts Now. So we know that that party failed actually to be registered with the IEC. So some of those individuals have jumped ship and they are bolstering this Rise Mzansi, who most of the leadership, as we spoke about Songezo Zibi, have never been in that political space. So bringing in some of those individuals will assist it in this campaign.
There are other things going on at the moment, because the DA has been sort of campaigning almost against smaller parties in the Western Cape, demanding to know why they're campaigning in the Western Cape. They obviously have every right to campaign in the Western Cape. Almost sort of campaigning against the smaller parties more than the ANC. Songezo Zibi for Rise Mzansi has also been attacking the DA in response.
Indeed, Songezo Zibi as well as Makashule Gana have been attacking the DA, saying that they are not a smaller party. South Africans are the ones who are going to determine the size of the party when they do vote. So they're saying it's unfair to say we're a smaller party because we've never contested the elections. Those were the words of Makashule Gana today when we spoke to them. He said once we have contested these elections, then you can determine the size of this party. So as they go into this party, they seem to be very confident in terms of funding as well. They have been well funded. We know Rebecca Oppenheimer gave them about 15 million last year. So they're saying that in terms of funding, they do have the funding, they do have the muscle to actually contest in these upcoming elections.
There's an awful lot that's going to happen now. Is there any indication of whether they're expecting to do well in particular provinces, nationally? Gauteng, obviously, they'll run a spirited campaign there. KZN, as you've been reporting to us, is very, very heavily contested.
Indeed. So their main priorities seem to be Gauteng, the Western Cape, KZN, all of these provinces look likely to be hotly contested. We say this especially in Gauteng. When you look at Gauteng itself, the ANC barely held on to Gauteng. They won about 50.19% in 2019. In 2021, during the local government elections, the ANC actually lost out in 9 of the 11 municipalities as well. So those hotly contested municipalities seem to be the target of Rise Mzansi. But they did say that they are actually contesting in all the provinces across the 9 provinces in South Africa. So they are going to put up a fight, and they are one of the smaller parties who actually have not been speaking about coalition governance. So for now, they want to go it alone, see how many votes they get, and then they will start speaking to other parties.
Wait to see what the result is and then wait for the phone to ring, I suppose. Might be one of their approaches. If you look at some of the other smaller parties that we've seen contesting their first general election, how does Rise Mzansi compare to some of the others? I mean, in some ways, they seem to have a good ground operation. It's hard to assess that. But they also just don't have the experience that some of the other parties do.
Indeed, they don't have the experience that other parties do. Like your smaller parties like Umkhonto weSizwe that have just come up, they have, in terms of Umkhonto weSizwe, they have contested in some of the by-elections. With Rise Mzansi, it's hard to tell because they have not been focusing on the by-elections. They've actually been putting most of their campaign into the upcoming general elections. So it's hard to actually determine whether they do have the support. But looking at the numbers of people that turned out today, it seems like there is quite an appetite for this party because the expectation from them was about 1,500 people. Not so sure if they did manage to get that, but it was quite a sizable attendance at the Bears Nodia Square today.
Juniuor Khumalo, thank you very much indeed. Our political reporter, of course, on the campaign trail for you through the elections.